Hi everyone. So I wanted to talk a bit about Cloudflare workers. You have to excuse me because it's the first time I've spoken to three-dimensional people for a year or so. Cloudflare workers, something that I've come across recently. I don't know whether you've come across Cloudflare as a sort of piece of technology that you can kind of put in front of your website. It does a number of things, so you can set up rules, you can sort of point parts of your site to other places, but it also has this thing called workers that I've come across recently. That's a bit about me. Okay, so Cloudflare workers execute on the edge. Does anyone know who that is? That is the edge, yeah. And I spoke to Cloudflare about this when we first started using them, and says, what exactly do you mean by the edge? And that's what it means. It means that it executes on a server that's in the country that you are, and that it intercepts calls before it reaches your site. At least that's what Cloudflare told me. So workers are written in JavaScript. But I'll come up with a really tortured way that I can fit this into dotnetsheff and not be talking about something different than .NET. They're serverless, so they're similar to Azure Functions. And I put free. They're not really free, but for testing them, to all intents and purposes, are free. You get like 100,000 requests a day, which on a production website is not that much when you have a look at what constitutes a request, but and after that I think it's 5 cents per million or something like that. So it's not hugely expensive, but if you've got a decent traffic, it can build up. There's a link there to sort of calculate how much it's going to cost you. Okay, so there's a few things that you can do with them. Essentially, you can put them in front of a route, so you can go, I don't know, whack my site, whack my endpoint, and then you can force it to return a specific set of URL or HTML. You can do something that's similar to rules, so you can sort of essentially send it to somewhere else instead of sending it to the place that it thought it was going. And you can also manipulate the URL, which I'll sort of go over in a bit. So you can, for example, lowercase the URL if you're getting sort of uppercase and lowercase. And you can execute them on sort of cron jobs as well, although I've not found a sensible use for that yet. Cool, okay, so we're going to do a quick case study. I've got a website which is there. This, incidentally, is a bit of a side point. It was absolutely torturous to register. I went through Azure because they will allow you to register a domain now, and I tried 3 times, and there's 2 .uk endpoints that are kind of in some hybrid state. I don't know whether I own them or I don't own them, and I've no idea whether Azure charge me for this or not. So I don't know what the takeaway from that is. Be careful if you're ever using their service to register a domain. It's slow, and we'll have a look at the code in a minute. And the reason it's slow is that it's got a privacy link, and when you click it, the privacy link is very slow. So I suppose the case study is, can we fix it using Cloudflare workers? So what I'm going to try and do is switch over to the code. Okay, so I've had a look at the code here. Oh, there we go. Right, that's far too small, isn't it? Right, I couldn't work out why this was slow at all. So instead of trying to fix that, what I thought I'd do is come up with a solution that involved Cloudflare workers. So let's have a look at what the actual website looks like. Can I do the same one? No, I can't, can I? Right, okay, well this is the website. You're all going to have to squint because it's really, really small. The website itself is relatively fast. But when I click on the privacy link, it takes ages. Like I said, not quite worked out why, but eventually it will come up. So we need to find a way to speed that up. So, let's go back to the, do that, and, well, I've just realised how much easier this is sat in front of a desktop. Okay, so what we when you're sort of dealing with workers, you download this tool called Wrangler. So this is an npm package that Cloudflare provide, which we can see if we jump to here. Wow, that's small. Is that as big as VS Code will go?
If you do Windows Key plus, no, Control plus.
Do what? Control plus?
Yeah, it should zoom in.
Ah, that's better. Right. So yeah, you basically do your regarding the sort of worker, you write it in JavaScript like this, and we'll sort of go over that in a minute. But you use this tool called Wrangler to kind of mess about with it. So you can effectively run it locally. So for example, with this, I can do Wrangler dev with a space. And what that'll do is it'll run my function locally, but it proxies it through Cloudflare servers. So if I go to that site, then you can see that I've got me you know, I downloaded the that tool that makes the thing bigger, and I can't remember a shortcut. But anyway,
Windows 15 plus. Windows at magnifying glass.
yeah, there we go. So yeah, I've written this worker, and it's got this HTML that it returns. So you can see that it executes it on a local port, but it proxies it through Cloudflare servers, so you can do a sort of half sensible test on it. Okay, so let's go back to cool. Yeah, okay, so shown that. If you want to publish your worker, you can do Wrangler publish, and then basically you can wind it up to a root. So I won't say publish because, well, I just don't trust it to work in a live demo. But let's cover adding the root. So we've got the slow website. If we go to adding the root. So that's okay. Can everyone say that? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So yeah. So for adding the root, basically you come in here. So just for context, this is Cloudflare sort of home page, if you like. There's a workers tab, which you have to enable. So once you click on that, it'll say, do you want to enable workers for your site? You tell it you do. You can sort of go in and do things with the workers themselves. You can actually edit them essentially in flight, if you like. So you can change the code of the worker. But the other thing you can do is you can add a route. So for example, if I wanted to just get rid of that. If I wanted to take my website that's slow on the privacy policy, which is executing. So if I want to take my website and the privacy policy, I'll take the URL from there and I'll tell it I've got it in another tab somewhere, which is there, and I can then select the worker that I want to execute off that URL, and if I save that, what it'll do is every time I request from that URL, it'll just execute my worker instead of basically before it gets to the site itself. So if I now go back here, so if I go home, I'm still on there. But when I go back to privacy, you see that's a lot faster, and I've now got the temporary privacy policy, which has kind of fixed the speed problem. Well, fixed is a strong word. So if we come back to the code, okay. So essentially, all this does is at the top here, you add a listener for the event, and then effectively on the listener, all you've got to do. I should have brought it quicker, shouldn't I? All you've got to do is return something from that listener. You don't have to return something. What you can do is you can forward it onto the original request. So that's kind of how that worked. But this one is another worker that I wrote for a slightly different reason. So this one, basically, it's the same thing. It handles a request, but what that does, if I see, that's too big now. Let's get rid of this. That's better. Yeah. So what that does is it handles a request, and then it comes in here and it goes, okay, well, I'll lowercase the URL, and if the URL is essentially lowercase, then redirect it back to the URL. Otherwise, just kind of carry on with the request as it was. So what that does is, whatever you type in, if you type in, I don't know, I am an aardvark in uppercase, you'll get I am an aardvark in lowercase, sort of from the URL. And I think that's my talk. Yeah, so I wrote a little blog post about this just because I found it quite an interesting thing. I mean, as a sort of an aside, I think one of the things that you can do with this is you can actually have it call out to third-party URLs or whatever to sort of augment the call. But yeah, so I think that's the end of the talk. Any questions? Wow, stony silence. Thank you.